Greetings, compatriots, and thank you for watching this edition of Meet the Candidate 2024. My name is Jonathan McLeese, and I'm a compatriot from Admiral Raphael Sims Camp number 1321 out of Dearborn, Michigan. And I'm joined with my co-host today.
Nice to meet y'all. Cousin Vinny Balducci, from compatriot of the private Meredith Pool Camp, 1505 in Hamilton, New Jersey.
And for the next little while, we'll be chatting with George Connor Bond, a candidate running for councilman of the Army of Tennessee Department at the 2024 National Reunion of the Sons of Confederate Veterans in North Charleston, South Carolina this upcoming July. Before we get started, let me deliver the following disclaimer. This program and the views or opinions that follow are not authorized or endorsed by the National Sons of Confederate Veterans, its General Executive Council, any of its Army departments, divisions, brigades, camps, or any other subsidiary of the SCV. This is simply a program made by SCV members for the benefit of the SCV membership, giving members an opportunity to see and hear from the candidates running for offices in 2024 that have a position on the General Executive Council. And now, without further delay, we'll welcome our guest. Thanks for coming on today, Connor. How are you?
Oh, thanks, guys. I'm so glad to be here. So glad that y'all are doing this. And I really like that disclaimer more than the one I bumble through every Monday. So that's a lot better disclaimer than ours.
Well, I've been asked by several people, and one thing is, we are not in competition with you. We are not in competition with SCV Chat. I said, it's different, it's separate, but it's all the same goal, to try to help everybody be more informed. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come on with us today.
Yeah, and we appreciate y'all doing that. The more the better is kind of mine and Harrison's philosophy. The more camps, brigades, divisions, including compatriots from across the country doing these type of videos and anything like that with social media, the better off we are. But we'll talk about that more later, I'm sure.
All right. Well, if you're ready to get started, we'll go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's get her going.
All right. So before we ask any questions, if you would just briefly introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about your background and your FCV credentials.
Yeah, so y'all probably have seen my Faces ad that came out back in 2019, I think, and boy howdy, does that feel like a lifetime ago. But for those that don't know me, my name is George Connor Bond. I am running for councilman for the Army of Tennessee. As far as SCV goes, I've been lucky. SCV has been a part of my life for almost 30 years. I remember growing up and going to camp meetings and headstone dedications, memorial services, and countless other events that are the bedrock of the SCV as a child. My dad, in the early 90s, when I was born and when I was an infant, was his local camp commander in Clinton, Mississippi. I've helped chartered a couple of camps, not being a charter member, but helped through the chartering process. And I've had the privilege of serving this organization on almost every single level. Despite being younger than our average membership, I have the experience, what I believe is the experience and knowledge to effectively serve the AOT in a national position. Youth also tends to mean new ideas that can help impact the future. As far as my SCV resume goes, on the camp level, I've served as a chairman of various different committees, lieutenant commander of a camp, camp newsletter editor. I currently serve as my camp's parliamentarian and chairman. We're hosting our division reunion, and I'm chairman of that committee. On the brigade level in Mississippi, we have a councilman position, much like the national one does. So I can talk about that a little bit more when I talk about my candidacy for office, but I served as a brigade councilman. On the division level, I've been chairman of various different committees. I'm currently our legislative liaison, chief of our heritage operations here in Mississippi. I've served as division color sergeant, lieutenant commander, and division commander twice, back to back. The first term was during COVID, and really didn't get to accomplish everything I wanted to, so I ran again. First division commander in recent history to serve 2 terms. I say recent history in Mississippi. It used to be that the division commander only had a 1-year term. So since we've changed it to 2 years, I'm the first one to have served 2 2-year terms. I've served as adjutant for the Army of Tennessee since 2014. Nationally, I was the National Deputy Chief of Heritage Operations, specializing in promotion. I was Deputy Chief of Staff when Paul Gramling was Commander-in-Chief, aide-de-camp to Larry McClooney and Jason Boshears. And when Tom Strain was Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief, I served as his chairman for the National Retention Committee. Other things I've done, I've been the co-host and co-creator of a little program called SCV Chat. At least the SCV, but not SCV related. I'm the interim chairman of the Friends of Beauvoir, which is the Beauvoir Jefferson Davis's last home in Biloxi, Mississippi. The Friends of Beauvoir is the fundraising arm for Beauvoir. I've been a reenactor for almost all my life. The highlight of my career has been commanding an artillery wing at the reinterment Nathan Bedford Forest, as well as recently being elected as major of my reform battalion. As far as awards that I've received from the SCV, this past year I was awarded the Robert E. Lee Award, multiple Heritage Defense Medals, Distinguished Service Medals, Meritorious Service Medals, Commendation Award, the SCV Leadership Award, Superior Leadership Award, the Hold the Line Award from the Mississippi Mechanized Cavalry, 1G, and the Mississippi Division's Commander's Appreciation Award, and various things on the camp level as well.
Wow. That's incredible. And I mean, it comes with the fact that you've been involved for such a long part of your life. So that's really awesome.
It's been a blessing to grow up around the SCV. It's been a real something that I don't take lightly, and something that a lot of my friends, it's something that they've missed, not having that ability to grow up around such fine compatriots as what we have.
All right, I'm going to throw it over to you, Benny.
All right. To get the ball rolling, one of the first questions. In about 2 minutes, could you please sum up your candidacy and the purpose of you running for your respective office?
Yeah, so I'm running for AOT councilman because the AOT is the largest army that we have membership-wise. I think number of division-wise as well. I can't remember exactly what the other armies have because I'm focusing on the AOT. And I've, like I mentioned a minute ago, I've been blessed to serve as adjutant for the Army. I've grown up around the men of the Army, and I love the AOT to death. But really, and this kind of goes into the next question, so to speak. Really, the whole key point of the Army councilman, if you look at our national constitution, Article 6, Section 3, that's where the role of the councilman is defined, and it's to be a representative from the membership of each department, excuse me, and perform other duties as prescribed by the CIC and GEC. So what I want to do is I want to effectively represent the men of the Army of Tennessee, whether it's men from Upper Dixie in the Illinois, Indiana, Michigan divisions, or down here in the Deep South from Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. They deserve, collectively, they deserve the best leadership possible, and I feel like I'm the man for the job. As I've mentioned, I've got the experience to be able to do it. I've been around the GEC long enough, and I believe I have a good feeling on what the Army of Tennessee deserves and expects.
Absolutely. And I love the amount of leadership that you bring to the table. That's inspiring at such a young age to have all this great experience and to keep pushing.
And you don't rest. I mean, my gosh, all the stuff that you were listing earlier, I don't even know how you've had time to turn around.
Oh, no.
I'm single. I've put, and that's one thing that everybody asks me, when are you getting married? I've for a good portion of it have put my a lot of stuff in my private life on the back burner because I am dedicated to the cause.
Nobody would dare question that.
when you don't have a woman taking up your time and your money, you have a lot more free time and money.
Yeah, you don't have a boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would definitely say that you kind of went into the next question. So I'm going to throw this one over to you. Do you support the SCV being involved in community service projects, helping those outside the SCV? If yes, what ideas do you have for doing so? And if no, please elaborate.
Yeah, so I completely do, and there's multiple reasons why. First, and this is kind of a key thing on my platform that I want to talk where I have talked about and talked about it on chat, and it's something that Carl Jones hit me up when I was his deputy chief when he was chief for Heritage Ops. It's the belief that A plus I equals R, or AIR. So activity equals inclusion, and inclusion equals retention. So on a selfish side on the SCV, the more things that our camps are doing, whether it's a camp project or helping in a community project, the more activity you have doing that stuff, the better off that your camp is going to be. Your membership's going to feel like you're doing something, that you're not just meeting, eating, and retreating, but you're taking the colors and moving them forward. So that's one key important reason. The second reason is on a big picture thing. Our organization, like the Confederate government, is organized from the bottom up. Think of a pyramid, if you will. The bottom of the pyramid, which is the largest portion of it, which is the bedrock of it, that is the camp. And our organization flows from the camp up. The camps have control, the membership have control of the camps, and the camps directly impact whether it's their brigade, their division, their army, and the national organization. And with that being said, the camp has to be and is the first line of defense for anything heritage operations wise. So in a situation as these big cities are beginning to fall, it's up to these smaller local camps to be that first of all, that eye in the sky, so to speak, that knowing what's going on in your community, with whether it's your local monument or school name or something like that. But when it comes time for the camp to stand up and say, no, we're not going to allow the history of our area, the history of our ancestors to be diminished, your camp, you win more flies with sugar than you do with vinegar, or honey than you do with vinegar. So if your local community knows who you are, they know not only, you care about preserving headstones of Confederate veterans, but you also do something for Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, or you do something to help the local high school, or sponsor a local Little League team, or something like that. They know that you're pillars of their community, and they will want to stand up and say, hey, these guys aren't bad. These are guys from our hometown. These are guys that are that are helping us out. Why should we listen to this outside force that's telling us, no, this is wrong. No, this is wrong. Plus, if we hide and continue to hide our light under a bushel, our organization's not going to continue to grow. So being involved in our communities is our best recruiting opportunity. And third, my reason why I support that is because that's what our Confederate ancestors did. You look back at all the histories of the different regiments and things like that, and you read about, or watching a documentary, and they talk about the massive losses that are taken either on the battlefield or even in the winters when they were in camp. These guys were cousins, they were brothers, they were neighbors, and an entire community would be decimated if something like that happened. Well, our ancestors were community oriented, and if we're to emulate the Confederate soldier, we have to have some type of responsibility and feeling of belonging in our communities as well.
100%. You're right about that. And I always liken it to, if you have a friend who knows you outside of anything to do with the Confederate, and then he also knows you're a member of the Sons of Confederacy, or the Sons of Confederate Veterans. You fly the battle flag. When somebody goes to your friend and says, this guy's a racist, or this guy's a hateful person, or this guy's prejudiced, they're going to look at him and say, no, he's not. I know him. and then he's going to be able to defend you and defend what you're all about. And hopefully, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in the past 30 or 40 years, such a social taboo has been placed on anything Confederate, whether it's the first national, second national, third national, or battle flag. It allows us to normalize and reclaim. We talk about reclaiming the narrative all the time. Well, it allows us to reclaim that narrative. It allows us that's our best tool in doing that, because it normalizes what everybody expects you to, or expects, when they hear Sons of Confederate Veterans or something like that, they're expecting this buck-tooth, missing tooth hick that is inherently, racist, that's spouting out all these things. But when they see that we're normal people, that we're people of their community, it normalizes that, and it allows us to reclaim our history for what it really means.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I really love that whole idea of reclaiming the narrative. And I love the point about the flags. People know all the flags. And I've had people say, well, they don't know the first national. Oh, yes, they do. People know exactly what that flag is. Anyone who's looked on TikTok, YouTube, all the different social media platforms, some of these young people who have been indoctrinated, they're attacking the first national now.
Yeah, well, and it's because of the social taboo that the battle flag has gotten, that mainstream, whether it's mainstream Apple or some other company like that, banning the battle flag. Well, we know that, okay, well, we can put up the first national. It means the same thing. Well, when we start using that emblem, then they see what we're using. So that's how they're able to learn. I mean, it's a great thing that we're teaching. But they're now using that as a point of attack. So if anything we can do to normalize what we have, not saying that our history is abnormal, but to reclaim it from what they say it is a huge benefit for us.
Absolutely. And, I always like how you're very thorough and you covered some of the other questions in there. My next question for you, as a young person, right, you have a lot of innovative ideas. I've seen that with SCV chat. And my question is, what new and innovative ideas do you have to increase long-term revenue coming into the SCV?
Yeah. So first and foremost, revenue is a huge thing. The very first thing that I'm committed to doing, if on the GEC, is paying down or paying off our museum debt. If suddenly we do not have this $13,000 a month, I think that's the correct number, note hanging over our head that we're having to pay, which, don't get me wrong, I love the National Confederate Museum at Elm Springs. I'll be up there next Friday for the GEC meeting. Hey, y'all can date the episode now. But I'll be up there. I've spent time up there. That's my key thing is to be able to pay that off, pay that down, so that we have, if suddenly we don't have that debt anymore, that is a $13,000 a month is a huge revenue boost for us. The other thing are a couple of different initiatives that I believe in, like certain merchandising opportunities that we may not be capitalizing on. That we definitely could do better with, as far as selling stuff to our membership. And really, the other thing is driving home that we are a 501c3 organization. A lot of people do not think about that until it's tax time. And even if, like, hosting a division reunion, doing some trade-off things as a 501c3, saying that, hey, we are going to offer you this much, you knock this much off your bill, we'll give you letters to the IRS saying that you made it as a donation to the SCV. That's something that I think that on a national scale camps are underutilizing. And then had one more, but it slipped my mind. But I'm sure it'll come back to me. If you ever watch an episode of Chat, that's one thing. But social media has, or the advancement in technology and social media has allowed us to things like Patreon, things like GoFundMe, other different avenues of trying to raise funds that we're not fully in step with yet.
We are our organization's been around a long time, and it, we have to take advantage of some of these new mediums that we haven't fully grasped the harnesses of yet. Absolutely. So my next question for you is, for years, I mean, we've been talking about and hearing people talk about improving communications in the SCV. So if elected, how would you propose working to change communications for the better?
Well, I think I've already started that with chat. It's that has been a project that part of our goal when we created in 2020 was to what was to be able to have a place to not only, as I've mentioned, normalize the SCV, gives our membership a way to enjoy programming that they're not going to see on TV, but also, as we have done, send out late breaking news. I get 15,000 emails a day between my 4 different email addresses and my work email address. It is what it is. I occasionally miss the Telegraph. While I read the veteran, there are times when I'll get the veteran, I'll put it in my car, and I'll bring it up here to work. But that veteran is already, the news in there is 2 months old. The way forward for us with communications are programs like chat, what y'all doing at Look Around, or not Look Around, excuse me, Harrison's Look Around. Monuments Across Dixie, the more video based stuff that we can do, the better off that we are. Because one, it's almost instantaneous news getting out there on a live stream. That throws it out there, but also podcast. That's another thing. That's not so much for information as in real-time information, as much as it is for historical information, which history is just yesterday's news. So that's my key thing is improving on what and building on what we already have. Just so that our membership can get it there at a push of a button. Years ago, we talked about an app, developing that for the SCV. That could be another potential in the future. I know the Georgia division had one at one point. But essentially, there needs to be a one-stop shop for all SCV news. And it's kind of like I told the Kennedys a couple of years ago when they were first wanting to learn more about chat. We need to build our own news or media empire. Imperialism is bad, except for media imperialism, as we're trying to build it.
Absolutely. And right. And that's something that I always mention, that, we have to be on top of the technology, the new apps, what's going on. I had a camp member to me the one time. He said, if we still made DVDs, and I said, dude, this is the 21st century. We do not really do DVDs anymore. We do, links, all that. At least I personally do. But, when we had this medium, we got to use it. I've had members that said, I don't want to go on Facebook. Well, if you're able to promote something on the SCV, for the sake of, something, go on there or another app. So I've always tried to do multiple avenues on that. And I like that you did the show, because that really took us out of the dark ages, put us more in the 21st century, got us out there. And I remember, when I was watching this, oh my gosh, I like this. This is like a really cool thing every week, because if you're up north, you can't always go to like meetings lists as much as you could if you were down south.
Yeah, and you're the OG follower from Twitch too, so.
Yes, sir. Latino Rebel. Those are the days. So just kind of going along with this, because this is an awesome flow. With communication, there might always be some discrepancies with, conflicts with other people or, whatnot. My question is, what, in your opinion, is the number one thing that we can do to bring together the membership and prevent division?
Well, and that's a great question. That it felt like my entire second term as division commander was filled with division. As Southerners, we are very, and descendants of Confederate soldiers, we are very independent people. We are very headstrong and sure of what we're doing. And by God, if I'm wrong, I'm still right. And sometimes there needs to be a mediator. I had a situation where there at the end of my tenure in office, we had a camp that did not like their brigade commander, who was reelected by the majority of the brigade by that brigade commander. So I just, was like Alexander and, cut the knot in half and said, okay, well, we'll just transfer this camp into another brigade because it was right there on the brigade lines. It wouldn't have messed anything up. And that, knock on wood, has been a pretty peaceful transition. There haven't been problems with that situation anymore. So sometimes there are problems where you need a mediator, but the biggest thing to prevent anything like that from happening is if you're an officer, transparency on what you're doing and why you're doing it. But as far as your basic member level is, know your fellow compatriots. Think about it. We are a fraternal organization. Standing rules in the beginning of that explains that as a member of the SCV, you have the right to attend any other camp meeting. You may not, you can't vote on the business, but you can attend the other camp meetings. But how many of our membership have attended another camp meeting before? You think about us. Everybody talks about we need to be pulling on the same rope together. Well, if you're in a camp that has another camp within an hour's drive, why aren't you driving over to that camp and making sure, and vice versa, making sure that y'all are doing things together? A camp putting on a memorial service, that's great, but why can't two camps put on a memorial service? Why can't we do multiple projects together? If we stop, and again, I know it's hard with the independence that we have, but the more that we can pull that rope together, the more harmony we can sow amongst our ranks, the more harmony, the less infighting. And we all need to take a page out of, I can't remember if it was Solomon that wrote it or if it was David, but Psalms 133:1 at the end of the day, and remember, how good it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. That's my translation, not necessarily King Jimmy's.
That's fantastic. You're 100% right. And so along those same lines, working together and all this, how do you define effective teamwork within the SCV?
Well, any time that a camp or a group of camps can get together and do a project, successfully do that project, then that is successful teamwork. So, for example, up at the Forest Boyhood Home a couple of years ago, the Alabama and Tennessee divisions collaborated and put a monument up there to the men who rode under Forest. That is a huge collaborative, successful team effort. In the case of on a national scale, the recent Arlington fight, did we have enough people fill out the one-click politics stuff? No, we haven't. But it was enough to where people from across the Confederation, and not just members of the SCV, our sister organizations with OCR and the UDC and other heritage organizations that are out there, coming together and pulling together and taking the time to do those. That was it was a success because we had 24 members of the House of Representatives, write a bill to the DOD explaining that it should be removed. That's something that was, did we lose? Did we, well, it's only halftime because of the Court of Appeals. But that wasn't a total loss. That us coming together and doing that's a victory. What's going on in Georgia right now with Stone Mountain, them doing the one-click politics, and I myself here in Mississippi, first time I ever went to Stone Mountain was during the national reunion at Cartersville. But still, I plan on going back there at some point in the future. Georgia doing that, and as many people getting on there and doing that is huge. That is teamwork. Anything where there's a collaborative effort and we have some type of success, that is the success of teamwork.
Absolutely. And I love the whole idea of collaboration too, with all of our Confederate groups, UDC, OCR coming together. Such a critical thing to do. And, we're all really one big Southern family when it comes down to it, especially with the early history of the SCV and how they worked very closely early on with the UDC and, vice versa.
And that's one thing that a couple of years ago, about 2012 and 13, I remember sitting, at least for sure in 13, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and us taking 45 minutes out of our time and arguing about the proper wording of the charge, and then on how we were going to vote, and then voting on how we were going to vote. But when you go back, and I say all that to say this, when you go back and you read the entirety of General Lee's speech, there at the end, it's not just, there's a section to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, but there's also a section that's there to the daughters. There's a section for all Southerners and all patriots everywhere. We all have a duty given to us in that speech. It's not just, we have our section, but all together we have to be pulling the same rope.
Absolutely. There was a book I read last year. It was called The Chapter in the Pacific Northwest by Mrs. Marjorie Ann Reeves. And towards the end, you will get teary-eyed because it just covers this wonderful history of Seattle, Washington. You would never imagine there'd be any kind of Confederate history up there. And it was just the women and the sons working together in harmony for years and years. And it ends on a bit of a heartbreaking note because the memorial got vandalized in 2006. But that's when the book ends. And it was just a wonderful read and a lot of good history that I had learned about our organization. And another one.
Yeah.
So kind of going, on that, point, because there's a lot of women that want to help, maybe people who don't have ancestry that want to help out. So my question for that is, what are your thoughts about the associate membership program at the camp level and the Friends of the SCV program?
Yeah. So as long as, I want to go ahead and say this, as long as I support them, as long as they know their place. At the end of the day, that you want to talk about things that cause disunity within the organization is somebody who's not a member of this organization saying how this organization needs to be ran. That was one problem I had as division commander. As an associate member, as a friend of the SCV, you have rights. You can participate and do everything like that. But when it comes time for the governance of this organization, that's where the line is drawn. When it comes time to how the camp votes and stuff like that, that's where the line is drawn. Digressing, though, to the main point of me supporting them, I completely support them. In Mississippi, one of the best governors that we had, who was friendly, as the friendliest that we've had since Governor Lowry in the 1890s, who his painting has his Southern Cross of Honor and UCB pin in it. It was Kirk Fordyce. Kirk Fordyce, we did his genealogy. My dad actually did his genealogy. No Confederate ancestors. His wife, ton of them. But Kirk Fordyce realized the importance of Confederate history in Mississippi. He was the one that, and this was before the Friends program was even launched, he was the one that first signed Confederate Memorial Day, or Confederate Memorial Month, rather, in a proclamation, almost 40 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago. I support the Friends because there are people who are just that are friendly to the cause. That can do stuff, that can be, as the Candidates say, agents of influence in their community, but just do not have the genealogy to back it. And that's the thing that does draw us all together, is that tie of blood. But there were people in the Confederacy who, or people in Europe who who could not fight for the Confederate cause, but still did something to help the Confederate cause. And we have to be willing to take any help that is offered out there.
Absolutely. And I love that about the boundaries. Boundaries are just so important, whether it's any aspect of life, an organization, a family. As a soon-to-be psychologist, every piece of literature I've read, whether it's family systems or group settings, IO, when you don't have boundaries, that's where you get conflict.
Yeah. And I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen.
So continuing along with going on outside, we've talked about other organizations, we've talked about Friends. How important do you think it is for the SCV to be explaining what we stand for out in the public?
Well, as I've mentioned before, first of all, the SCV should be, and any, including our sisters in the UDC and the OCR, but the SCV specifically, in my mind, we should be the NRA for the South. We should be we should be the first stop for everything Confederate. Whether it's you're wanting to know really what a Confederate soldier looked like, authenticity in that should play in a factor. Proper history. Excuse me. Proper history, knowing the history and education That's something that's very important. And as far as us being out there, if we're not out there explaining what the Confederate soldier did, why he did it, and B, doing it truthfully and honestly, one, we're living down the charge. We're not doing our duty. And duty is the most sublime word in the English language. I quoted two Lees just then, two separate Lees. But we're not doing that. And second, we're never going to grow this organization. We can continue to hide in our comfort zones and not get out there in the public. Which I'm not saying that the camps aren't getting out there and recruiting, but if we're not actively out there, actively in our communities, actively correcting the laws and myths, but B, we're not actively out there being seen, what's the point? If we're not doing our duty and we're hiding, there's no real point in us continuing on as an organization. Our ancestors deserve for us to continue on. They deserve the best representation they can get. I'm looking at a picture of my ancestor right now who lost his eye at Shiloh, got discharged from Confederate service, and in 1864 re-enlisted. He made his sacrifice. I can make mine.
Amen.
And I love how bringing up a connection to our ancestors, because that's really what it's about. We do all this for our ancestors. And, I'm still finding ones in my tree. When I first joined, I had a super collateral one. And then when I was studying Jersey's ties to the Confederacy, because there's a lot of hidden ones, the irony was I found another ancestor who was closely related to me.
Yeah.
Right in there. And the sacrifices they made, leaving their home state and all that, for a cause they believed in, pretty admirable and inspiring, because that's what drives us to continue this.
Yeah.
And along those lines, I liked how you gave some examples about, you gave examples of how you creatively solved a problem. So I want to know a little bit more on that, with my question being, what important skill would you use to accomplish the goals in the position that you're running for?
Well, I like to think I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. I like to think that, there's more than like my daddy used to say, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. If you can't, and again, learning by our Confederate ancestors, Lee and Jackson at the Battle of Chancellorsville, they could have easily been like, oh, hey, there's no way we can beat this Union Army. Or Federal Army, excuse me. We need to head back to Richmond. But no, they figured out a different way. So I try to think outside of the box. If the traditional tried and true methods will not work, let's figure something else out. My biggest example of that, I know I mentioned the camp that had problems with its brigade commander and vice versa, but I was a COVID-19 division commander, and as y'all remember, COVID-19 shut us down. And one thing that Mississippi, I wanted to make sure of within our next fiscal year, we had a new operating budget. Well, our reunion venue for that year had to cancel on us because of COVID restrictions. Well, I began rereading through my division constitution and looked and saw that the division commander had powers to, in the case of an emergency, call a specially called reunion to fix something. And I viewed at this, okay, well, we'd have to operate off the same budget. We can't do a budgetary reset. And we had some stuff that we needed to reset. Old things like an old poster that we hadn't done in years, but was a line item in our budget. Instead of doing that, we put that towards social media. And there were some other things like a recruiting retention budget. We didn't have that budget. We didn't have that as a line item in our budget at that time, stuff that needed to be changed. So I said, okay, I called up a venue location. I said, do you have any restrictions on meetings? Oh, you don't? You're a private facility, special reunion call. And we were able to go into a new fiscal year with a new budget that's still pretty well being operated, updated, but operated on now. So you can't always do a Franklin. You sometimes have to do a Chancellorsville.
Absolutely. For sure. And that also would be a great example of out of the box thinking,
That's right.
which would have been another question. So you covered that one as well. I'm going to sort of switch it around to another sort of a feel here. We asked earlier, about the definition and the position that you're running for. But this question, although it sounds a little similar, it is different. If you were to win this upcoming election, what does the title of this respective office mean to you?
Well, first and foremost, I would be extremely humbled and honored that the men of the Army of Tennessee placed their trust in me. This is not a light undertaking, not something that I will take, light, but I'm gonna flip it a little bit, and say, if I don't win, nothing's gonna change. I'm just not gonna have the title. I'm not in this for the title. I'm in this because I love the organization and because I want to do right by the organization. I want to do right by my ancestors. I want to do right by the men of the Army of Tennessee. If I don't win, it's not like I'm going to fold up my tent and go home. I'm still going to be at national reunions. I'm still going to be at division reunions. I'm still going to try my best to put my best foot forward for the SCV. It'll be the honor of a lifetime. But it's not a make or break thing. And that's one thing that I think has been a problem with some officers, and I'm talking about camp officers all the way up, that, they get the title and they think that, oh, that's it. The title doesn't mean anything. Title is being Army of Tennessee councilman and $1.50 can get me a cup of coffee across the street. It's my way to want to and be able to serve an organization that I love and I've dedicated most of my life to, as well as the men who I respect and have grown up knowing and respecting, to put my best foot forward for them.
I love that. And that's so true. Absolute fact there. Title's just at a title, nothing more. And, my next question is let's say you win this, right? If elected, what are your goals and objectives for the first year of you getting the office?
So the very first thing, and it's something that I've already started pushing, is teaching people, teaching the SCV, teaching the camps how to use technology to benefit and push them forward. The fact that we have a lot of relatively new officers, myself included, despite having all that experience until I became Chief of Heritage Operations for the Mississippi Division, I never had to write a press release. And figuring out how to do that. Well, there's a certain open AI software that I can type in, write a press release, pro-Confederate press release, and it will about and fill in the necessary information, and it'll spit it out for me. That just saved me 3 hours of trying to make sure everything's right, grammar, sending it off to somebody to double check on it before sending it out. That's thing number one. The second thing I want to do is something I've mentioned earlier, and that is push AIR, AIR. Activity equals inclusion, and inclusion equals retention. We have to start identifying, and we have to keep that in our mind, whether it's, and having a camp meeting is good, but having something outside of the camp meeting on top of it adds something more to your members. And as well as for a camp, making sure your membership is active in the camp, whether it's somebody who passes out the program for the night, or it's passing out the name cards, or if it's, taking up door prize tickets, if you do door prizes, whatever it is, make sure, especially new members, have some type of activity during the camp meeting, and make sure that you are doing something, anything, at least one extracurricular project a quarter, whether it's adopt a highway, working with your garden club, working with your genealogical society, doing a memorial service, doing a living history, taking a camp field trip, having a camp cookout, forming your own camp's barbecue cooking team, fishing team, whatever it is. Give your membership something extra so they feel like they're included. When you have a member that feels included, he is going to retain his membership. That first couple of months, getting him in there is a huge, huge deal. but keeping him in there is bigger. Back when in my fraternity days, we used to say rush is 365. In other words, recruiting is 365. And that is a mindset that the SCV has mastered. But we need to change that R to retention. We retain our membership. We get our museum debt paid down. Now imagine the extra revenue flow we've got coming in.
Dude, that's absolutely true. And not only that, but if you have these activities and they're coming together to do that, they're also forming a stronger brotherhood, establishing firmer relationships as members of the SCV, and that keeps them involved as well.
Exactly. And it stops them from fighting.
That's right. It does. It
That's
keeps the peace.
right. I'm going to ask this, member views and thoughts regarding the direction of the SCV. How important is that to you, and why? And how much do you value the concerns of the membership?
Well, like I mentioned, we are a bottom up organization. We're the pyramid. And I hate saying pyramid because you automatically think pyramid scheme, but that's just the best way in my mind to equate it. And the power in this organization is in its membership. If I belong to other organizations where, as a member, my voice doesn't matter, and I may go to a meeting of that organization once a year just to go and pay my dues. But because I feel included as a member of the SCV, and because I want our membership to feel included, that I care and about what they're saying, what they're feeling, what they're going through, that again, it would be hypocritical for me to say, well, we need to retain our membership, but then ignore what they're saying. So the voice of the membership, and again, that's the entire job of the Army councilman, is to be the voice of the membership on the GE of the AOT at least, or even ATM and A and V. That's their entire job, is to be the voice of those members that have elected them. So how can you successfully do the job if you're not listening to what your members are saying?
Absolutely.
Excuse me for 1 second. I'm going to grab my water bottle.
Surely.
No problem.
Woo! Brought to you by Dasani.
It's so true, right? And the members, and I love that example, because I always tell, like, my camp and all that, I'm like, hey, I'm just one person. I want somebody eventually to step up to leadership. I told them I'm not going to be the person that's going to be here for 30 years. At some point, I want to leave Jersey. I want to get out totally, but it's the members that make it possible. And that's what I always stress. If we're hosting an event, they're the ones that got to come to the event to make it come alive. And going on, to the question I asked before, how do you determine or evaluate success for the position that you're running for?
Well, I think that the membership determines that. If I run for this office and I am, well, first of all, I know the membership will, having been a division commander, if they're not happy with what I'm doing, they will let me know. And I want them to let me know. So the happier the members, that's one way to define success. But if I decide to run for a second term and they don't see, that I'm doing the job for them, then they won't elect me to that second term. But I'm not putting the cart before the horses on it. But ultimately, any type of success that I can gauge it on, or at least how I did it as division commander, is one, growth. Whether that is retaining members and adding new members to it, or just overall, which it was option A is what I prefer, or adding more new members to the organization. That's one good key fire way to see that we are being successful and moving forward. And then the other one would be membership, the camps, seeing more and more camp activities out there. I believe if I can get, and we can get everybody on board with AIR, then 90% of our problems will fix themselves. And of course, our local victories. The national victories are huge when we can get them. Division victories are huge when we can get them. But I love hearing stories. I was on the phone with Forrest Dawes earlier today, and we were talking about a monument that a couple years ago was in trouble in Upper Mississippi. And we had we had success because the membership of that community came out to their board of supervisors, and it's more than just SCV members, but they came out to their board of supervisors, and that monument is still standing tall. So,
Well, that's great. Well, you know, I don't know about you, Vinny, but if I'm not mistaken, the only other question I had on the list is how do you stay current with developments in the SCV? And my goodness, you are a part of keeping everyone current with developments.
And updated, so it answered itself pretty much.
yeah. I was about to say, I talk to Adam Southern about 3 times a week. I talk to Jason Boshears about once every other week. I talk to Carl Jones about once every 3 days, about the same time that I spend talking to Adam. And that's just one thing that I've had, especially within the past 10 years, being involved on the Army and national level, is making those connections with and also it doesn't help that my chief of staff when I was division commander is adjutant in chief as well. And I still talk to him. But being involved on all those levels, just branching out there, volunteering, being asked to do stuff, I've created the connections with these different guys, and I can find out stuff just as soon, as well as chat, because they tell us, hey, we need to break in tonight with this, or we need to break in with that, and or if I can see it on the telegraph or social media, immediately I'll call Jason and be like, hey, boss, you coming on tonight? Do you need to talk about this? We can make a special episode if you need to. Same way most of the membership does.
Well, that clears our list of questions. So with that being our last question, we will begin to work toward the close of the program. But I want to, again, thank you for being willing to come on this program to speak to the membership, particularly those within the Army of Tennessee Department, of which I am a member, and to give everyone an opportunity to see and hear from you as a candidate, that'll be running at the national reunion that folks will have an opportunity to vote for if they're in the AOT. Is there anything at all that's left that you would like to say to the folks that are watching before we close?
Yeah, guys, if you and your camps feel that you like what I've said and you want to give me a chance, serving you on the AOT will be the greatest honor of my young life. If y'all want to vote for the other guy, I'm okay with that too. Just at the end of the day, I want to serve this organization to the best of my ability. And if you want to support me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you again so much, Connor. And thank you to everyone that's watching. I hope that this helps you, the viewer, be a more informed voter when we meet together as a band of brothers later this summer at the national reunion. On behalf of our producers and my co-host, compatriot Vinny Balducci from Private Meredith Pool Camp 1505 Hamilton, New Jersey, and compatriot Dennis Palmer, who's also producer of Secession Camp number 4 out of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm Jonathan McLeese from Admiral Raphael Sims Camp 1321, Dearborn, Michigan. And we thank all of you for joining us for this edition of Meet the Candidate 2024. God bless you. God bless Dixie. Deo Vendice.
Deo Vendice.